was, and now you kind of take stock of what it was and then look ahead. Isaac, how are you?
Always a pleasure, my friend.
How you been?
I'm good, man. Doing great.
So I'd love your big picture view. We'll talk specifically about a few different areas, but your big picture view on the team and on the season overall, because the season comes in different parts and comes in different ways, and parts of it were great, parts of it not so good. But taking it overall, how would you kind of look at this season for Utah football?
I still think it's a positive season. It ended badly, which sucks, and it happens, and there's nothing you can do to change it. But what an amazing season that they were able to have, that they were able to do so many great things. And it's a bittersweet thing because it didn't end the way that I'm sure the coaches and players had hoped. But they made some awesome strides, did a lot of great things. We saw and learned a lot of different things about different players. I think it was a positive season.
Well, no, I mean, you win 11 games. It's a positive season. It's even a good season. As you said, and Kyle Whittingham said the other day, it was a good season that ended badly over the last two games. I'd be curious what your thoughts were. What changed in the Pac-12 championship game and in the bowl game for you? Because Utah looked like it was a machine that was just rolling downhill up to that point in time. What did you see in both Santa Clara and then the other day in the bowl game that looked different about this team to you?
I feel like they didn't have the composure that they've had, and I didn't feel the confidence. And because I was a player, and because I've been there, I've been in certain situations as a player, and sometimes I can watch a game and see guys' faces on the sideline, see their body language, and during that 8-week stretch or so, where they were just running a tear through the Pac-12. Anytime that there was adversity, I could watch the game and see and read the guy's body language, see how, guys like Tyler Huntley and the defensive players and just field on the sideline. And there was a sense of calm that they had and composure and confidence that when they would face adversity, you would be like, okay, no, they're good. Like, they're fine. They're in their element. They know what they need to do to come back. And I just didn't feel that and see that in the last two games. I feel like the confidence wasn't there anymore. I feel like that composure and the calmness of the sideline when adversity hits, it just wasn't there. And those are two big, very, very big key components that you have to have for four quarters.
Do you think that had something to do with the level of competition and the talent they were playing in those last two games?
Yeah, I mean, I won't take anything away from Oregon. Texas, even though they're 7-5, was still a really, really great football team. But I don't think that Utah got exposed. I don't think that they're a bad football team. I don't think that they're, everybody thinks that because we didn't have a great showing against Oregon and we lost the bowl game that, hey, Utah just played mediocre and terrible teams and they got exposed when they finally played talent. Those teams are talented teams, but this Utah football team in 2019 was a really, really good football team. I just feel like adversity struck during the Oregon game, and they didn't respond well. I feel like there was so much hype around them being on the cusp of college football playoffs that I won't speak for them, but I feel like they almost got caught up in the college football playoffs versus the task at hand in having to play Oregon at the time. And then I feel like the loss to Oregon was too great of a feat to overcome, so to speak, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And we're talking to Isaac Asiata, former Utah and NFL offensive lineman here on the Bill Riley Show. I just wonder, and you could tell a whole lot better than me because you've been in those trenches, I felt like Utah was superior physically, athletically, coaching-wise, superior to those 8 teams they played in that stretch of games. I felt like they weren't challenged physically or athletically in most of those games. And when you haven't seen that level of physicality and talent for a while, I wonder, and I kind of wonder in the USC game too, because they got fat and happy on BYU, Northern Illinois, and Idaho State, and then they had to step their game up. It's almost like going from, a slow walk to a sprint. And I wonder how much of that might have played in. Is there something to that, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, level of competition is always hard. I mean, you can't compare Oregon's offense and defense to, say, Oregon State or
Colorado.
There's no comparison because Oregon State will win that matchup 10 times out of 10 every day of the week. But the hard thing is, as players, is you have to understand where your strengths and your weaknesses is. And I think you make a good point when you say that they didn't necessarily get challenged until the Oregon game. Now, with them having been challenged against C and they lost, and then they went on a great stretch, and then was challenged again versus Oregon, I still feel like our team, our players were just as talented, but it was a challenge. It was a challenge in and of itself. It's not going to be a cakewalk, and like you said, went from a walk to a sprint. Like, you're going to have to work, and I'm not saying that they didn't work. I just feel like it just didn't go their way, and they got kind of. I don't know how to say it and how to put it in the right words, but it's almost as if that winning streak lulled them to sleep, because it wasn't, like you said, the greatest competition. Now, they're great competition because anybody in the Pac-12 can beat anybody in the Pac-12 any day of the week. But I just feel like when they were really challenged, it just didn't go their way. But that doesn't mean that they're not, a great team, great talented individuals and players.
So they did a pretty admirable job, and I'm talking about the offensive line now this year, of protecting Tyler until the last really 2 games. I think they gave up 6 sacks against Oregon and 5 against Texas the other day. So they gave up 11 in 2 games, and I think they had given up maybe 13 in the prior entire season. What was happening from your vantage point in those last 2 games? And again, it's still a relatively youngish line. You had a redshirt freshman, a sophomore, a junior, and 1 senior. So they clearly got better, but against the better competition, and again, elite competition, they had some struggles. What did you see from game 1 to game 14 from that offensive line?
I feel like I saw what I want to see and what I look for every year is growth throughout the season, but also that cohesion that has to occur within the offensive line. And for me, when I watch football games, I only ever watch the O-line on offense. Like, I don't care about what's going on with the skill players. I just watch to see how they do their combination blocks, how their pass protection, because for the most part, before the snap starts, I can watch and see what the defense is doing, and based on that, I'm like, okay, maybe they're going to do this, and if they do it like this, and all those different mechanics. But I felt like the O-line showed tremendous growth. Young, and I talked about this on my Twitter, was they're young, they make mistakes, they're not as experienced, where you have a redshirt freshman, you have a junior in Orlando, and a sophomore, all these different things, they play into account, and only experience and reps get you to where you want to be, if that makes sense. And the good ones, but then you learn so much more from the bad ones, which is why I'm excited that we returned 4 of these guys, is because the bad offensive line showing that we had the last 2 games is only going to make those 4 returning guys that much better, which is why I believe that next year our offensive line is going to be one of the best that we've seen in a very long time.
So you lose Darren Paulo, but you return Braden Daniels, redshirt freshman this year, Orlando Umana, the center, who will be a senior next year, and Nick Ford and Simi Moala. You've got 1 spot to fill. Is, in your mind, the obvious choice to flip Simi with his experience from right tackle to left tackle and then have that competition with maybe Olaseni at the right tackle spot? Or would you put a brand-new piece in at the left tackle spot?
I think they will move Simi over to the left tackle spot. It'll be difficult, but he reminds me so much of Sam Tevy, where he came from the D-line. But I feel like Simi is so talented for how young he is. It's crazy that he's a true freshman and he was able to come in and do really well. But you can see, like I talked about, in flashes and in certain plays where he's not, the inexperience shows. Do you know what I mean? but he only time and repetition and practice will get him better. And I think him moving to left tackle will be something that he has to work on, and I know he will work on during the off season. But I feel like it'll be a benefit to move somebody with that much experience at such a young age over to left tackle because he's good enough to be there.
So is Bam the obvious right tackle, or do you think there's a competition?
I think there's a competition regardless if Bam was, and that's just because of the way that Coach Harding coaches the O-line because, yeah, we'll return 4 guys, but he hits a reset button every time during the offseason where, yeah, there are 4 guys who are returning starters, but, you know, there's usually a surprise that comes out of it. You know what I mean? Like, he does such a good job of not playing favorites, not playing seniority, but the 5 best guys will be out there. And I trust his judgment when he says that every week during the season, the 5 best players will be out there. And I mean, that's a battle that I'll be excited to see who's going to be those 5 guys, who's going to be battling for that tackle spot, the 5th spot that's open. And then there's a lot of talented young guys who we didn't really get to see a lot of, like Johnny Maeda and Keaton Bills, and I'm excited to see that battle.
Yeah, I know they like Keaton Bills an awful lot. I think he'll be in competition, pretty stiff competition with Braden Daniels for that starting left guard position because they rotated Keaton in the last 4 games of the season. So you don't have any real concern about this line moving forward then, Isaac?
No, I don't, and it's easy for me to say that because I know Coach Harding on a personal level. I know what it's like to be under him, but I also know what kind of guys and the player and the men that we have in the 4 dudes that are returning, as well as the guys who are kind of behind the scenes in the depth. But from the players, I mean, the fans' perspective, I can see why it's so troubling because of how the last 2 games went. But for me, how I see it is stuff like that doesn't happen overnight. You don't just get better because people say play better. You don't get better because you lost 1 week and so all of a sudden you're a world beater the next week. You know what I mean? It takes time, and the best part is they have 8 months where they get to work, refine, and do all these things during the off season. With, in my opinion, is the best, is one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach in college football, definitely in Pac-12 in Jim Harding. People don't understand how much work that man puts into preparation and getting his guys ready every week. He'll take the blame for everything that happens and never once put it on his guys. And that's why I'm excited, because he demands so much out of himself and out of the guys that are in his room. It's not easy to be an offensive lineman in general, but to be one under him, you have to be just about perfect in order to succeed, if that makes sense.
It does. Last thing for you, Isaac. This year you had Tyler Huntley, mobile quarterback, could run it, and of course you had the best running back in program history in Zach Moss. They were decidedly run heavy this year. Next year, I kind of feel like with the guys they've got competing for the quarterback position and not that one bell cow back, it wouldn't surprise me if they were maybe a little. They maybe swung it to go 55 or 60%. Pass-heavy, pass-oriented. Does that change the mind? Does the offensive line, is this offensive line more geared to run, or will these guys, if they decide to be a little bit more pass-centric next year, be okay with that too?
I think they'll be just fine. They're so well-rounded, and the kind of athletes they are and that they're bringing in now can do both. Where when I came in with, like, Norm Chow, like, he wanted us to be these huge – 330, just absolute monsters of offensive linemen. You know what I mean? That just took up space, ate double teams, all this different stuff. And then when Erickson came, it was like, no, we want to run outside zone. We want to stretch guys. We want to be fast. But the guys that they have now are so well-rounded where if it's 60-40 or 55, whatever, leaning more towards pass, they'll still be able to get the job done regardless because of how talented they are. And it's just a different breed of old linemen.
Who do you think is the dude next year on this line? You were kind of the dude your last year or two. Is it Nick Ford? Is Nick the dude on this line? Is it Simi Moala? Is it somebody we don't know yet? Is it Orlando Umana? Who's the dude? Who's the regulator?
I think it'll be between Nick and Orlando. Like, they remind me of me and JJ, where Nick is kind of, he doesn't talk much, but he's just kind of, the whatever hard workhorse guy, and then Orlando is a rah-rah guy, but he works just as hard, you know what I mean? And I think you gotta kind of have the one leader, but it's even better to have two, if that makes sense. And I'm excited to see how Nick, if we're gonna pick one, I would say Nick Ford. And I'm so excited to watch him play because of how great of a player he is, but I know the talent that he has, and the growth that I've seen from when he first came to now has been really fun to watch.
Hey, thanks for coming on today. I know I can always turn to you for a little insight on line play. It's always easy for people to say, hey, you got to get better. Hey, you had a whole season, things like that. But I want to get somebody smart like you could tell us exactly what's going on. So I appreciate it, Isaac.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Always a pleasure, brother.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.